Sexual slavery and sexual exploitation is attaching the right of ownership over one or more people, with the intent of coercing or otherwise forcing them to engage in sexual activities. This includes forced labor, reducing a person to a servile status, and sex trafficking persons, such as the sexual trafficking of children. Sexual slavery may also involve single-owner sexual slavery, ritual slavery, sometimes associated with certain religious practices, such as ritual servitude in Ghana, Togo and Benin, slavery for primarily non-sexual purposes but where non-consensual sexual activity is common, or forced prostitution. The Vienna Declaration and Program of Action calls for an international effort to make people aware of sexual slavery, and that sexual slavery is an abuse of human rights. The incidence of sexual slavery by country has been studied and tabulated by UNESCO, with the cooperation of various international agencies. The Rome Statute, which include enslavement, and indirectly in an internal armed conflict under Article, but the court's jurisdiction over war crimes is explicitly excluded from including crimes committed during situations of internal disturbances and tensions, such as riots, isolated and sporadic acts of violence or other acts of a similar nature. The text of the Rome Statute does not explicitly define sexual enslavement, but does define enslavement as the exercise of any or all of the powers attaching to the right of ownership over a person, and includes the exercise of such power in the course of trafficking in persons, in particular women and children. In the commentary on the Rome Statute, Mark Klamberg states, sexual slavery is a particular form of enslavement which includes limitations on one's autonomy, freedom of movement and power to decide matters relating to one's sexual activity. Thus, the crime also includes forced marriages, domestic servitude or other forced labor that ultimately involves forced sexual activity. In contrast to the crime of rape, which is a completed offense, sexual slavery constitutes a continuing offense. Forms of sexual slavery can, for example, be practices such as the detention of women in rape camps or comfort stations, forced temporary marriages to soldiers, and other practices involving the treatment of women as chattel, and as such, violations of the peremptory norm prohibiting slavery. Commercial sexual exploitation of adults is a type of human trafficking involving the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring or receipt of people by coercive or abusive means for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Commercial sexual exploitation is not the only form of human trafficking, and estimates vary as to the percentage of human trafficking which is for the purpose of transporting someone into sexual slavery. The BBC News cited a report by UNODC as listing the most common destinations for victims of human trafficking in 2007 as Thailand, Japan, Israel, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Turkey and the US. The report lists Thailand, China, Nigeria, Albania, Bulgaria, Belarus, Moldova and Ukraine as major sources of trafficked persons. Commercial sexual exploitation of children describes CSEC as a form of coercion and violence against children and a contemporary form of slavery. A declaration of the World Congress Against the Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children, held in Stockholm in 1996, defined CSEC as sexual abuse by the adult and remuneration in cash or in kind to the child or to a third person or persons. The child is treated as a sexual object and as a commercial object. Child prostitution, or child sex trafficking, is a form of sexual slavery. It is the commercial sexual exploitation of children, in which a child performs the services of prostitution, usually for the financial benefit of an adult. India's Federal Police said in 2009 that they believed around 1.2 million children in India to be involved in prostitution. A CBI statement said that studies and surveys sponsored by the Ministry of Women and Child Development estimated about 40% of India's prostitutes to be children. Thailand's Health System Research Institute reported that children in prostitution make up 40% of prostitutes in Thailand. In some parts of the world, child prostitution is tolerated or ignored by the authorities, reflecting an attitude which prevails in many developing countries. A judge from Honduras said, on condition of anonymity, if the victim is older than 12, if he or she refuses to file a complaint, and if the parents clearly profit from their child's commerce, we tend to look the other way. Child sex tourism is a form of child sex trafficking, and is mainly centered on buying and selling children into sexual slavery. It is when an adult travels to a foreign country for the purpose of engaging in commercially facilitated child sexual abuse. Child sex tourism results in both mental and physical consequences for the exploited children.